So, you've done the reflection, you've been listening to the whispers, and now it's time to choose. Now that you've narrowed it down, buy a notebook to finalize your decision. Tell the universe that you're searching and to show you the path that's best for you. Every walk you take, every show you watch, even random conversations, start noticing the patterns the universe is showing you. Write them down this week or month. You've told the universe you are searching for the place you need to start, which is surprisingly not the place you think you need most of the time. Spiritual belonging isn't about finding a perfect fit. It's about movement. Good or bad, everything and everyone teaches us what we like, what we don't like, a different outlook, or techniques we would have never considered prior. The key to remember is we must learn to get along with diversity like we instinctively knew once. Know when you need to be a student and when you can teach, and the differences of that respect. It's about finding your rhythm in the dance of life and discovering what your purpose is. You know what? If you do, then start with the one that has the most of what you like. Decisions, right or wrong, isn't what matters. Just make one and go all in. It's indecision that keeps you wandering. Commitment creates transformation. Let's be honest. Not all mentors are meant to guide. Some want admiration, not growth. Some are still healing their own wounds and end up leading with ego instead of care. You want a mentor who can see your vision for your purpose, not clip your wings. So how do you spot the difference? Let's talk about what a path or a teacher should actually offer and the questions that reveal what a group or teacher is truly about underneath all the robes and titles. Each path should change your mindset. If your worldview always stays exactly the same, nothing has shifted. If you believe your perspective is the right one and someone else's is wrong, you will never grow. Not everyone communicates the same way. Sometimes you both can be saying the same thing without realizing it. One or two statements don't tell the whole story, nor do they reveal that person's full beliefs on the matter. If someone says something that challenges you, ask questions before jumping to conclusions. That's what tribal listening is about. That's how we build understanding, not just belief. If you don't move out of your comfort zone into spaces where others hold different views or potentially do, you will remain stagnant. Discipline doesn't mean rigidity. It means intention. Without a framework, whether it's timed rituals, journaling daily, grounding, or working with the moon schedules, your practice will drift. Eventually, it falls apart or becomes spiritual dabbling. There must be a protocol to follow. Your path should reconnect you to nature, to the cycles, to your power, and to your responsibility to use it wisely. Always remember not to cut with your words. This path should draw you in to service, not for self-greed, but for meaningful giving. If they can't handle respectful disagreement, that's a red flag. Healthy groups invite discussion. Toxic ones shut it down. But be careful here, for not all boundaries are bad. Some traditions have sacred ways of doing things, like specific ways on how a circle is cast, how drumming is done, how the dancing is done, or how gods are approached. This is not intolerance. That's a protection of lineage, rhythm, and deep-rooted meaning. This one is very personal for me because I am actually a traditionalist. I trained 10 years on my own, started just before 1980-ish, but when I found others, and it happened to be in Wicca, I learned at an accelerated rate. The structure, that rhythm, that community, it changes everything. I'm no longer Wiccan now, but I honor that path deeply, and I honor my priests and priestesses who walked beside me. It gave me discipline, ritual structure, and a strong foundation, and I will never forget that. And yes, within specific traditions, there is a right way and a wrong way to do things. In Wicca, for example, there are proper methods for raising a circle or leading a ritual, and that matters. But that's tradition, not gatekeeping. For me, the line is this: respecting boundaries in closed or cultural practices, good. Shaming seers who don't match your ways, gatekeeping. A good teacher welcomes questions. They don't hoard power. They light the path for others. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean they can't say no. There is an order to their lessons. But if you ask to explain it, maybe they might say, and you might learn a little more instead of assuming. This one is gold. A confident, safe teacher will always say yes without guilt tripping you. But let's get real. What hurts isn't when someone leaves, it's when they've left and then disrespected that tradition they learned from. I've seen people take off and then share private teachings, break oaths, or speak badly about a path or a teacher they once claimed to honor. It's happened to me, and it's happened to many of my elder friends. That's not spiritual maturity. That's lack of respect. I left Wicca myself. I've never shared the secrets I was trusted with because many sacred teachings aren't found in the books. They're passed on through trust, through experience. That must be protected. Back in the day, at least in the 80s and early 90s, when covens watched you before they let you in, there was a reason. It was to keep out those were coming for spells or all the wrong reasons, or to wear it like, "Ooh, I'm a cool witch now," like bragging rights. We kept those people at bay. Unfortunately, those days are gone, and us elders have to accept that it has become eclectic and has changed. And so we have to adapt. But we will refuse to do it by cutting others down. Walk away with gratitude for what you did learn, for what was great. Well, not all priests or pagan leaders are trained in trauma work. And that's if they are honest about it. You're not learning how to be better from them or taking spells of how to get over your trauma or stop someone from doing something. They don't need to be a therapist, but they should know how to listen and hold space and how not to cause further harm, especially with rituals. Things like ritual scourging, skyclad ceremonies, or entheogens like peyote or even marijuana can be meaningful for some, but deeply triggering for others. Using natural entheogens is not just used in some indigenous traditions. It appears in other spiritual lineages as well, but it's not often spoken of publicly. And that's why leaders must prepare participants privately with clarity, consent, and care. Each individual is different. If someone mocks your discomfort or says this is the way it is done, that's not sacred. That's spiritual negligence. This question tells you everything about the emotional maturity of the group. Every community has conflict, just like every relationship does. What matters is how they handle it. Watch for these. We talk things through respectively. We give space, then come back to resolve it. If they say we don't have conflict or we just remove the people, red flag. Leaders should model calm, honest, kind communication. This will help you determine if you're entering a cult-like structure or a genuinely empowering space. But you must remember when asking, some traditions have ranks, degrees, and titles, and that's okay if those titles reflect genuine service and earned responsibility. I guess what you're listening for is how leadership is decided. Are leaders appointed by ego or by the community trust and experience? Are the titles used to control or mentor? How long has the person been studying or teaching? Leadership should be earned through service, not claimed through ego. So they might have different degrees in business groups, motivation teaching, mental health, or just long time teaching of their tradition. Look for someone who is at least has 20 years under their belt of teaching. Don't listen to gossip, because someone else's experiences is not others' experiences. So don't let a few people taint that. It isn't necessary to be a priest to be somebody. That is just an occupation in any of the faiths. But title is not what's important. Having a title of priest does not make you better than anyone else or more knowledgeable. A priest is just a guide and helps you find your way. A priest has its own duties, and you can see what the duties are in each tradition. A person who plants herbs or farms is just as important. Each occupation is necessary for survival. It's not about being a seer or a priest or reading tarot, as I said in part 1. This is so important, especially nowadays where people can self-title themselves, since I believe it was Scott Cunningham came out with a book and said to do so. And that was because so many people were in rural areas and really wanted to know. However, it caused a big stir. And so in the early 90s in the USA, possibly Canada too, people started to self-title, and then eventually it became eclectic. So if they dodge the question or act like questioning leadership is disrespectful, that's a red flag. This might seem like a basic question, but it's one of the most revealing. A true mentor will say something like, I'm here to guide, not to control, or to light the path, not to own it, because you walk your own journey. Watch for these red flags. If they talk about power, obedience, or needing to be followed, take a step back. Mentorship is about helping someone become more of themselves, not a copy of the teacher. I love when my students thrive. I see them in roles they might not see themselves. So I have to step back and then see their vision. I give them all the tools and the past that I have, and they choose for themselves and make it their own. So ask this question directly and listen closely. If you've done the work on yourself and don't have trauma-based thinking, you'll know in your gut whether they're offering guidance or control. A healthy spiritual group should support you and your personal path, but they must also want to count on you showing up for communities in ways that matter for them as well. Building trust and maintaining strong energy dynamics is essential. It's not about pressure, it's about presence. What's fair? About a 70% attendance for you and them is a good rule of thumb. If the group holds 10 rituals or gathering a year, showing up for 7 shows commitment. And that's what you need to do while still allowing room for your own personal life. And that's a good rule for joining any kind of group, whether it be the Red Hatters or even a band. You're not just there for what you get and then take off with. You're there for what you can become and what you can help co-create. If they say never or get defensive, run. True spiritual leaders know that learning never stops. Everyone changes every year, but it's more noticeable every decade. You want someone with at least 20 years experience, with a traditional group preferably, or a system that works. You don't want a lot of people loss. That doesn't mean that they haven't lost anybody in their group. There's always a trial and error in the beginning, and there are always people who don't make respectful students. You want someone with deep knowledge of their group's gods, the why of the group or focus, the history of their group, and the path they follow. Of course, we've already went over the ethics of the group. You do not want someone who has only read a couple books or hosted some new age circles where they work on spell work or doing witchy crafts. You want someone who perhaps has a certificate in their training, and if you're lucky, other groups or people credentials like mental health or group dynamics study. And lastly, someone who is gentle, wise, and knows doubt is a part of growth and makes all questions welcome, and knows that even though he or she has years of training, no title makes anyone better than another person. Here you can be your authentic self, your spiritual self. You are no longer chasing spells or using secondary tools, although sometimes you do. You're now walking in integrity, in strong roots. You're connecting to your ancestors, your land, and your body. You feel challenged always, but also deeply home. Why? Even if you narrow it down, the one you choose still might not be the right one for you in the end. But listen, you will never get the perfect match. No one does. There is no such thing. There is no such perfect relationship. That's why people have become eclectic. But that's just ego and very lonely. Today, that has become normal. But you must remember, we are meant to be tribal people. And you must remember where this separation all started. It was from those who had emotional immaturity and could not be told no, or didn't like something a leader said or another person in the group, or maybe they were embarrassed. Just relax. The most important thing is to make the decision and go all in. And yes, you can change paths, but make sure you've fully explored the first one. If you're asking my opinion, I would start with Wicca. And you might say, but you're not Wiccan, or that's too restrictive. But I've never regretted starting there. It teaches discipline. It teaches how to get along with others in a tradition, how to build routines, gives you a solid base. It teaches you to honor yourself and others and all teachers, even if you outgrow them, because they are part of your sacred journey. Never taint names of those who helped you grow, even if after you've had an argument or disagreement. That's dishonoring yourself. And honestly, who wants to teach someone who causes harm to others or gossips about them? Solitary paths are valid, but connection often speeds your growth. Choose your own family's roots. Don't follow someone else's culture just because it feels magical or you like it. Every pre-Christian culture has sacred depth, and you're not limited to modern witch kits. Yes, it is harder to find someone, especially if you're in a remote area, but groups do exist online now. What makes a path worth walking? It must transform your mindset. If it doesn't change your life, it's not the path. Real paths bring you back to nature, cycles, your own power, and a higher vibration. They also draw you back into service, not sacrifice, but support. Giving back grows your soul. And the soul, when it gives with love, it finds the very thing it was searching for: purpose.